Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome. And thank you so much for coming and listening to Teach, Inspire, Grow podcast. I am here today with the lovely Georgina, and she comes from a very far distance from here in the UK, but I am not going to steal her limelight by explaining what amazing things that she is doing. We're going to add that in our conversation today. But our first question, are you ready?
No pressure at all.
Okay, I always have to refer to it because as many times as I ask this question, I still need to make sure I get it right. Okay. What is your very first memory of water, and how do you think that memory has shaped the way that you see swimming today?
I'm laughing because in my head, to me, it's quite funny, but I think when I explain it, people are going to be like, "Oh my God, that's horrific."
Oh,
my first memory of water is actually my dad just throwing me into the pool, and it was on a holiday. And I might get the location wrong, but in my mind and from conversations I've had like with my mum and family about it afterwards and memories from that moment, I believe we were on holiday in Florida and we were visiting Orlando and Universal Studios and whatever it was then at the time. And that's where I learned to swim eventually. But rewind a little bit. All I remember is these Ninja Turtle green little swim wings, that traditional little belt that just get wrapped around you, and then you've got these little hard shells on your back. And I think the idea was it forces you to be horizontal in the water rather than vertical. And I just remember him launching me in, and it not really being a thing of, oh, she might swim, she might not, just get on with it.
Yeah.
And every time I think about learning to swim, and then when I moved forward and started teaching very small children to swim, I just get this flashback in my mind of these green Ninja Turtle water wings. And I learned to swim with those so quickly. We were there for about 3 weeks. And I remember I was 3 at the time, but remember from what my mum was then telling me is that you literally started with those turtle water wings. And by the end of the 3rd week, you'd taken them off and you were swimming without them. Although, as I said, when I say it out loud, some parents or swim teachers might be absolutely mortified. Like, how on earth did you throw a 3-year-old literally face first into the pool? But then at the end of it, I was then filled with such confidence, thinking that my little Ninja Turtle water wings were magic, and that's what helped me to swim, and that was it. Off I went at 3 years old.
Yeah. So when you came back then to back off holiday, did you have to go back into the water wings, or was that it then?
No,
did you go to swimming lessons?
It was just, I was attending swimming lessons from, I was about 4, I think, when I first got put into swimming lessons. But my mum and dad, between them, really built my water confidence from that point. We've always been in the water. And after progressing through lessons, I then went on to doing a swim club. And I was then swimming at a really young age. I think I was about 6 years old when I was swimming, like 25 meters. And I remember that back then, I think the minimum age that you should have really been was about 8 years old. But because I was quite competent and I built this, I can do it, and this confidence from such an early age, that I was just going and I wasn't fazed by it, and then turned into quite a good swimmer.
So with your dad throwing you in, then can you remember if you were shocked, or did your dad, how, because it could have gone one way or the other, obviously. Did you naturally have this confidence as a child, do you think, and then you're okay to have dealt with it? Or do you think it was almost like back in the day, it was almost like you just got to get on with it, haven't you? There's no sort of fluffing it up or anything. It was a case of, oh, she's in now, great, off you go, Georgina. Or do you remember like thinking, oh no, that wasn't very nice? Or
I think, because afterwards my dad said he was surprised that I didn't cry. I remember that I didn't cry, and that he was giving me a lot of praise of, oh my goodness, well done you.
Yeah.
I think he then realized what he'd maybe done at that point.
Right.
Because I then went in and came up, but then looked around and just then went under again and just got on. I did have goggles on, so I don't know whether that helped with it. I think if I hadn't had them on, my reaction might have been a bit more of a
orientated.
Yeah. So it didn't faze me, and I think my personality has been that way since. Very headstrong, very confident, and just will give a go at anything. And I think that has then also evolved and traveled, and I've carried that with me through everything, through going through my school years, then my university and early career, and then leaving the UK out of university.
Yeah, to me, it's great that you were able to carry that through, and that was your personality driving you forward to what you're doing today, which we'll get into. But with regards to going through university, what did you study at uni, and then how did you transition? Did you continue with swimming throughout that, or did you stop and come back?
So the reason I smirked a little bit was I want to say I didn't have to put a lot of effort. It was quite academic, and I actually went to school. Originally, I was at military school. I went to the same school that my dad and my grandfather went to, which was the Royal Hospital School in Holbrook. They were in the Navy, so it was just children of children could go into it. And I didn't survive past 2 terms. I really struggled with the divisions, with having to bull my shoes at 11, 12 years old. It was very regimented. And military school, I hated it. I wanted to go back home. It was a boarding school. Because I was such a good swimmer, I managed to get headhunted and given a swim scholarship. And I then ended up leaving after the 2nd term at Holbrook and going to St. Felix in Southwold. And I went there on a sports scholarship, but specialising in swimming, and naturally went up through the senior school, GCSEs. As I said, academic as well, but didn't really seem to have to put too much additional effort into achieving that. The sort of crossroads moment, though, came when I wanted to make a decision about whether I really wanted to carry on pursuing swimming. Naturally, teenage girls find other interests, hobbies, boys, studying, exams, life. And I was actually working as a groom, very into equestrian as well. So I was working as a groom on weekends, actually, for one of my school friends' mums. I was doing that. I was earning money and life was progressing. I passed my driving test. I was very goal orientated. I remember I did my lifeguarding qualification. I then did my level 1. I did my poolside helper. I then did my level 1. I then did my level 2 teaching. I then did my level 1 and 2 coaching, ASA qualifications back then. Now they're obviously in England. But I did those quite quickly too. And I then landed on my feet whilst then going into sixth form and studying A-levels. I was then working. So I have these memories. I hope none of my old school teachers see this, but I have fond memories of leaving school at lunchtime, because we were allowed to drive into school, but in theory we were supposed to leave until the end of the school day. I remember agreeing to a midday shift, which was a 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. lifeguarding shift. So I'd leave school at 2 o'clock.
Amazing.
Drive from Southwold to Leiston to go and do a lifeguarding shift and be earning money at the same time.
Wow.
I must add, at the time, I was head of sport. I was head of girls' sport captain.
So you were performing in the school part of it.
And it was like, butter wouldn't melt. So I was studying, I was doing all my sports fixtures, I was playing hockey, netball, swimming. And swimming then just, something had to give. And I wasn't enjoying it as much. There's a lot of background and history, I think, that's emerging lately in the news as well about swimming clubs and competing. And I don't want to go down that route particularly, but it made a lot of us at the time decide that we just couldn't continue anymore. And we focused on our studies, and Thankfully, we did. Had many of us gone down solely the route of continuing pushing nationals and hopefully progressing on to other major competitions, we might not have had a degree to fall back on at the end of it. And I was asked by one of the sixth form career advisors, kind of form tutors back then, when I had to start making decisions and applying with UCAS and what university courses you want to apply for. And I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do back then. And the reason I laughed was, oh, what did you choose to study?
Yeah.
It literally was eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Really?
And my finger landed on leisure management.
Oh, what was the other?
It was a whole list. I wasn't even
looking. Okay, you're just going down the list.
This
Got
is
you.
the funny thing, because I was just so, I don't know what I want to do. I'm 17, nearly 18 years old, and you're asking me, do I want to be a dentist, or do I want to do this and that? And I didn't know. I was having fun, and school was easy, and I honestly hadn't
done anything, basically.
No. And I remember thinking, leisure management, oh, okay. I rolled with it. I literally rolled with it, and ended up moving because I was lucky. As I said, my academics were quite strong, and I dropped out of 2 subjects at A2 level, but just because I was like, do you know what? I know that I'm going to roughly get an A at worst a B in my English literature and my physical education grades. So why am I pushing myself to study 4 subjects when I can do 2 and go to work at the same time? So that's what I did. I just did English literature and PE. Got really good scores in those, got all 5 of my university offers. It was Northampton, Loughborough, I think City of London was one of them, Brighton was one of them. But I ended up just going to my local university near from where I grew up, and I ended up at Suffolk University, waterfront in Ipswich. And I was studying there. I don't recall much of it over the 3 years that the course was, because I was never there. I was doing studies online, and I was working full time. Yet again, I was juggling everything, and somehow still, I mean, I graduated university with a 2-1. And I don't know how I did that, working 45-hour weeks. I was working at Crown Pools initially as a lifeguard, and then I moved on to David Lloyd, Ransom's. I think it's Ransom's Europark is where it is.
Okay.
But because I'd done those level 1, level 2 qualifications so early age, 17, 18 years old, I had that stepping stone already. So I remember then working there as a level 2 swimming teacher and a lifeguard to top up the hours. And I think I was about 20 at the time. And then the Learn to Swim coordinator role came up. And I applied for it thinking there's no way they're going to give me this. I'm really young. I'm still at uni, but what's the worst that can happen? And I got offered the job. So I was then in a kind of junior management position, and I hadn't even graduated from university yet. Fast forward to jobs then after this, I was always asked, is your CV genuine? Because how have you managed to be 2.5 years almost in a junior management position, running swim programs from David Lloyd, which is quite a well-known brand in the UK as a health club. You've graduated from university with a leisure management degree. You've got XYZ qualifications.
How is this true?
Right here. And genuinely, I had to then convince and say, look, you can call my references. I've got references, and here are my qualifications. And I only think it's resonated with me now, or that I actually realise how much I achieved back then in the early days, fairly recently, because at the time I was just wasn't really acknowledging what I was doing. And I think because I was then already in a management position within swimming, I loved swimming, and that was what I was qualified in, and my leisure management degree matched it. And I was I bought an apartment, and I bought my own car. And so I was living an adult life from 18 years onwards. And I then found I wasn't stimulated enough. I've done all of this now, and like with working in schools sometimes, and with the programs at David Lloyd, they become quite repetitive quite quickly, because you work in seasons, you have your blocks of KPIs, and once December hits, You go again,
January again.
and it starts all over again. And it's block 1, block 2, summer holidays, summer intensives, and then winter term. And I remember I was in my apartment in Ipswich, and I was just randomly thinking and contemplating and going back and forth, thinking, don't know if I want to be here doing this anymore. Can I see myself doing this for another year, 2 years, 5 years? So I opened up the laptop, did a little bit of searching, and I typed in teaching jobs, operation management jobs, and a load of lists come up. Load of lists. Applied for several in London. One was with David Lloyd. I think another one was Virgin Active, and then just various others.
Yeah.
And randomly, a job came up as a site coordinator or a site manager, I think it was, with Hamilton Aquatics. Nothing about the company. Location, Dubai. Didn't even know where Dubai was at that time. And I remember I sent the CV, closed the laptop, and a day went by, 2 days went by, and then I got an email back. Are you available for interview? I think it was like the very next day.
Right.
This
is intense.
But again, still at this point, I had no idea where Dubai was. Interesting. And, you know. So I did the interview. Within 24 hours later, they offered me the job.
Wow.
And this was in January of 2014. I remember saying to them, I'm quite keen, but I'd like to come and visit first. And I remember getting on a flight from Heathrow, visiting Dubai, visiting the company, visiting the office and the locations. And I spent 5 days there. I'd already made up my mind within 20 minutes of me being there. I was just so taken in by this city and lights and just this vibe of opportunity.
Yeah, just different to where you were in the David Lloyd in your local.
I'm from a tiny little village in the country in Suffolk, so for me this is like
a big city or lights,
cows, fields, and bright lights. And I remember thinking to myself, I've now got to go back and hand in my notice and tell them I'm literally going to move abroad. And it was hard. I had a lot of memories at David Lloyd, and it was the start of what my career has turned into, and very fond memories with members there. I remember one of my clients there, he must be in his 90s now, and he'd never been taught to swim. Nick was his name. And every time I go back, I see him, and I have this horrible feeling in my gut every time I visit the UK, because each time I go to the club, I'm so worried that he's not going to be there because of how old he is now. And every time I've seen him, he said, I remember you. He goes, and you had so much patience with me, and I never thought that I'd be able to learn to swim at 72 years old. And now swims the full lengths of the pool, freestyle breathing to the side. And it's just lovely memories of that early sort of career there.
Well, you imprinted memories for that person, haven't you, and created that wonderful experience, and people are forever grateful for that, especially when it's something that they've always wanted to do, but then when they find the right person to work with them to do that. And it's not just necessarily the water, it's the relationship that you built, obviously, because that continued afterwards, because a lot of the time you do these lessons with these people and then you say goodbye and then that's it, isn't it? You never come across them, or if you do, it's just a hi or what have you, how are you, and then off you go. But when you've explained that, it just obviously you've made that imprint for both of you, and that sounds really lovely. So you obviously did a magical thing.
I think swimming and teaching swimming, though, depending on the person, maybe it's not every swimming teacher. I can only speak for myself, and
of course.
But I genuinely get quite emotional when I relive those memories of those. I don't want to call them clients, but
they become friends, don't they?
They have a huge impact on the way that you progress through. And I remember it so fondly. And he said to me, he goes, you're the first person that has allowed me to go at my pace, and you've had so much patience and humility, and I've never felt embarrassed or ashamed to be at the level that I was at when I started, and the journey that you have brought me on and where we've then ended that journey is just such a, it's just, I can't put it into words, really. It's, it was,
I think that when you do spend that time, like I said, if you're adding water to the mix, but because of the newness of them, even though they're adults, even with children, really stick to it really as well, is that because they're almost very raw. So when you're coming in and obviously helping them, you're not stripping back anything. You are psychologically, but physically in the water, you're starting fresh. Even if they've had 70 years of experience of life in that situation, they haven't. So their life is in your hands in that essence, because they're wanting to run that journey with you. And it is, if for people that do work with adults, children are different because they're like a different entity, but still similar in that way, because again, when you're adding water, it's different with land. You're adding another layer of things that you have to think about. Because on land, if they fall, they're fine. But in the water, if you're adding that extra element into it, aren't you? So that's why working with adults as well is really, really special. But also, I think at another level of having to then read them as an adult, because a lot of the time as well is that they're questionable about why can't I do this, or whereas children don't, they do but they don't, because they can't really put two and two together. But it's really nice to hear that you took that time in order to work through with that person. Like you said, it's the humility side of it, isn't it? Is that you're dealing with what you have in front of you, which I think we all need to do with swimming, no matter what age they're at. And I know that you guys do that with the program that you do, what you're currently doing. But then, so how long were you in Dubai for?
Do you know
tell me about the experience of swimming in Dubai?
It was a blur, to be honest, because I hit the ground running, and I was there in, this is sad. I know the date, 16th of April, 2014, sorry. 16th of April, 2014 was my flight from London. I arrived on the 17th and I started work on the 18th.
Oh my goodness.
And I was a site manager at 2 schools. They seemed to think I was capable to run 2 sites, and they grew. And that was on Al Khail Road in Dubai. I remember. And I then had, I had 3, and I had a Little Gems school as well for early years, which I loved. So I was running 3 venues and I loved it. Who doesn't love the sunshine all year round? And at 20, I was just turned 22, and at 22 years old,
what an experience.
What 22-year-old girl is not going to like Dubai back then?
No, absolutely. Sign me up. Take me back to 22.
So I was making friends and enjoying work and getting to know a new country, new people, new culture. And I loved it. I genuinely really enjoyed it. And I quickly progressed on to, there was a job opportunity come up, and it was for Abu Dhabi. And I made a really good friend within the company there. I'm still in contact today. And we both went for the opposite job. So she was in Qatar as ops manager, and I was in Dubai going for ops manager in Abu Dhabi, because they had several branches. And she hated being in Qatar. And we both applied for Abu Dhabi, but at the time, I think wires got crossed. They didn't disclose to me that, well, there's only one position and one of you is going to have to switch, basically. So in the end, she was moved from Qatar to Abu Dhabi, and then I moved from Dubai to Qatar. So I then went to Qatar to work as operations manager there. Wasn't teaching swimming though. It was just managing the swim coaches and swim teachers. I was doing finances. It's completely changed now, but I remember back then having bags of cash that I had to take to the bank. So it was a lot. I was looking at taking cash and running everything over there. Really enjoyed it. But then I think I can't recall whether it was my grandma or my mum at the time. I think it was my grandma. I had to leave quite quickly due to family circumstances. It was an illness. I think it was my grandma at the time. And I remember having to go, but then things seemed to be okay again, but I couldn't then go back to this job because I had to officially resign. And I then actually went and worked as a project director assistant, which has nothing to do with swimming, for Siemens engineering company. So I did that for a year and a half. And in all honesty, I like the job. I like the people. Very busy, fast-paced, high expectations, working in a corporate environment. But the desk job, 8 to 5, wasn't for me. And I really struggled to adjust. I missed swimming. I missed coaching. And in the end, I then got requested to go and work as Director of Aquatic Operations for Sheikh Faisal. It was known as SFQ Sports Academy at the time.
Right.
And that was in 2016, I think, roughly. So I went and did that. We grew the program. There was a lady there already, but she couldn't give it the time that it needed, the swimming element. And they had sports. They had football, basketball, gymnastics, loads of other disciplines and sports there. And I remember trying to set it up whilst I was still working at Siemens during my notice period. So I'd got coaches from outside that I'd networked with and came recommended. And I basically set up the program. I set up all the spreadsheets, what was on offer for summer intensives. And they then went and did that whilst I was still working my notice. And then the day I finished, the following day, I was then into SFQ and then teaching and coaching. And I did that for about a year. The company then changed direction quite quickly. There was a lot of shifting. I then ended up going from that to then going to set up my own sort of swimming provision with another couple of contacts from Evolve Wellness. That then started to pick up. But then because it was summer season and typically in the region, most expats, they're traveling. So then business dropped quite a bit in the summer. And I had to make the decision again to return home. But in the meantime, I was then offered a job as a swimming site manager with Speedo in Dubai, and wanted to get more involved in tutoring in regards to lifeguarding, because I really took an interest in that. So when I joined them, my job then quickly changed from being a site manager to then being head of health and safety training and development for Speedo. And I was training up the lifeguards and looking to run courses with them. And then COVID happened. So fast forward to COVID.
The big C.
So COVID kicked off in March 2020, and I had a really, really dear person in my life at the time. And he was working for Emirates, and he was telling me, look, I don't know what's coming, but if you want to go home, you need to leave within the next week. They're already starting to close our flights down. We're going to be grounded. So you need to seek this window. And I remember it was really emotional at the time because it was like, I didn't want to leave. And even our company, Speedo was saying at the time, we don't know what's happening, but we're going to have to cease operations. Government is sending out all these guidelines and there will be no swimming, no work. And so it was a really scary time, very uncertain. As for a lot of people, COVID wasn't good at all. And I left without a plan. And in 5 days, I'd returned my lease car, cancelled my contract, shut down everything in Dubai, packed about 5 or 6 suitcases at the time. And I had to be out of there on a flight. And I remember going home being really dazed as to
what's just happened.
Did I make a mistake? And because it was so uncertain then, nobody knew how long it was going to go on for. And I actually then got bored. If I'm not stimulated or there's nothing to keep me going, I then start Googling. So it was like, I then went on Google again and I looked for jobs. And at the time, the only thing that was going was work within social services. So I actually interviewed for a vulnerable children's home unit, literally about 10 minutes from my house. So the location was perfect. And I ended up working as a therapeutic rehabilitation support worker for children that have come from domestic abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, really awful life they've had. And it honestly, it was one of the best things I did too. So all of these things that had been out of my control had steered me on this journey. And I remember doing that, and I'd also then been applying literally weeks before COVID kicked off. I'd applied for a job in an international school in Jeddah as a primary swim lead, and they'd offered me the job, but because COVID had happened, schools had to close down, so they couldn't tell me when you're going to.
Starting point was.
It was, okay, I know I've got a job, I just don't know when I can go.
When?
So, of course, me being me, carried on with this therapeutic rehab job. And again, started to think, I've earned some money, I've made a difference to these kids. Again, memories that I will treasure forever. And I thought, if I'm working online, because I was teaching swimming online, and I thought to myself, if I'm working online, in theory, I can be anywhere in the world.
Right.
My mum's going to kill me if she sees this. But so I then decided that I was going to get on a flight and go to Egypt, because Egypt was one of those countries at the time during COVID. COVID didn't exist. So I went, I worked online. I rented an Airbnb for 6 weeks, and I was just doing all my work online in the mornings and really enjoying time. Met friends, made amazing memories. Honestly, COVID, again, I don't want this to be interpreted in the wrong way, and I don't want to offend anybody by it. COVID was awful for a lot of people, and I really tried to flip it into a positive. And I was working on myself, and I was gaining additional qualifications online with CPD, and just trying to make the best out of really horrible circumstances. I remember it was then the last week in October, of 2020, and I got an email saying Saudi government have opened up the borders. Can you come next week? This is what your proposed flight is going to be. And I remember having to then be like, okay, yep, I booked my flight back to the UK, because I'd left all of my belongings in the UK, as you do. Yeah. Went back, and then 4 days later, I was then on a flight into Jeddah in Saudi. And fast forward 5 years, I did 5 years at the school, had to rebuild a program that had clearly dissolved because the kids were not in school, they weren't allowed to swim. And that was really, I rose to the challenge. I was then doing the junior development group there. And then during the daytime at school, when it did finally open and I wasn't still posting slides on the Google Classroom, I was teaching curriculum during the day, mostly for primary, but for a little bit of secondary. And then I just felt, can I do this for the next 5 years or so? Can I do another 5 more? And in the end, if you go back from when I first got on that plane from London and I landed in Dubai to Jeddah, from 2014 to then 2025, it was a long time. And a lot then happened in between that. I then became a mum. Life changed quite quickly. And sadly, my dad passed away in March last year. And that moment, although obviously very sad, it made me look at life in a very different way, and having to enjoy every opportunity that you have and to make the most of everything, a total different outlook. And I remember looking online at the time, and I applied for a job in China. It was in Shanghai, and I applied for a job here at Shrewsbury in Thailand, and got offered both. And I genuinely think that I've always had a guardian angel up there navigating me and presenting opportunities, and then having the luxury or do I call it luck? I don't know. I've worked very hard to get to where I am.
You've worked hard for that.
It's a lot to get to where I am. And to be able to have the choice of which one do I go for. And I didn't go for the one that paid the most money. I actually went for the one that would give me the better quality of life and the home work-life balance, because I want to take my daughter to the park, or I want to spend time with my daughter and to enjoy all the little things and savor the cup of coffee when it's hot rather than it being cold. And
absolutely,
I think life is so short. And everybody used to say to me, I remember it because I used to be teased at school, oh, you're always going to be teaching swimming, maybe one day you'll get a real job. And
I love that saying.
That's why I jumped into a job with Siemens initially, because I was so afraid of, if this is all I do, I'm never going to be able to do anything else. I'm not going to have any experience in anything else. Maybe I'm not going to be taken seriously. And I'm glad I did it, because then I knew that isn't what I wanted. I tried it. It was okay for a while. And then I went back to something that I love doing. And I think with most people that teach swimming, we stick at it, or say stick at it. We choose to carry on and navigate our way with this profession because we genuinely love doing it, and we genuinely love making a difference to a child that is so petrified of just putting their feet in the pool. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, an adult that has never been taught how to swim and is then starting on that journey. And I think that's why, despite navigating here and there, I've just always gone back to swimming.
No, that is just an amazing story. And I think your drive and your passion has really, really pushed you in, not pushed you, because you're saying about luck. I'm not really a believer in luck. I think that part of it is that a pathway's open, and it's whether or not, like you said, you chose to go down a different route. You had two choices. Initially at school, you had those choices, but you ended up going, oh, which one shall I do? But if you hadn't have done that, who knows where you would be today? It's almost like the movie Sliding Doors. You'll never know, because obviously that choice is what you end up doing. But without that, those each one stepping stone, you would never know that if you ended up going in a different direction, how would it have been? So that the path that you've taken is your path that should have been for you and is for you. And with your grace and with your determination of wanting to make the most of what you did in that particular time, some people could be like, oh, here we go again. But you were making the most of that experience, even going from Siemens to then helping children with such a traumatic experience in the social services. That is one extreme to the other. But when you're in there, you gave it your all. And I think that's really, really great. And I give you a huge respect for that. And every sort of door was open, but you decided, okay, I'm going to go through this door, and I'm just going to gung-ho it and keep going. And I think that with the role that you're in now in your international swim school with Vicky, with being the head of PE, I think you make an amazing team with what you're doing, because you're not just teaching swimming. I think that you're now bringing all of your experience that you've had up until this time in what you're doing, and I just think it's amazing. Can you quickly tell me about your program in Shrewsbury?
So I don't know if we have two campuses. So I'm at Riverside and Vicky is at City, and we both have quite different facilities. Vicky's site has like a concrete, it's open air, but it's got a concrete roofing around it. There's a contrast to ours. So we have three swimming pools here that don't have shading. So we get sun, it's very open. We have a small learner pool, and we have a middle pool and an external pool, which are both about 25 meters. So we have competition groups and senior Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 happening in the far pool. I don't know why I'm pointing. It's almost like it's over there. You know? Over there. Cool.
It's just there.
It literally is just over there. And then our middle pool, we call pool 2, is mostly for Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2. I would say if you're referring it to Swim England levels, it can be anything from stage 2 up to stage 5, 6, and then stage 7 and up in the competition pool. But our early years, which is one of my favorite love-hate relationships with them, because sometimes you've got all this enthusiasm and you're like, we're going to do this. And I even put my little Leo the Lion puppet hand that you may have seen on my LinkedIn. And he makes an appearance. He's petrified of water, and the kids find him hilarious. I make a real role play of it, and I take him I knock on the door, and then we come over and do our register, and then we get in, and then the chaos begins. So we have early years from our small pool. It's about 0.75 meters deep, so they can all stand, and it's gradual going in steps. But we can have up to 3 very different ability level lessons running at once. Our ratios are very generous. We typically don't have more than 1 to 5 in youth lessons. And then as it goes up, 1 to 8, and then 1 to 12. So even for our senior swimmers, to have one teacher to 12 is quite generous.
Yeah.
And we're fully staffed in terms of lifeguards. We always have one lifeguard per pool. So if all 3 pools are in use, we've got 3 lifeguards. And don't want to use the word lucky because it is, but it's not. I'm very fortunate to work within the team that I do. I genuinely think my team are amazing. I certainly wouldn't be able to do what I do without their support, the enthusiasm and the energy and the passion that they bring every single day, and the support that they give one another. It's quite frequent here, especially now that we're in high pollution AQI season here in Thailand. And even me, I'm a bit muffly at the moment, sinuses, sore throat. If one of us is sick, everybody jumps in, we help cover one another. And it's just a very well supported group of people that share the same passions and love what they do.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Sign me up.
When are you coming to visit?
I know, I wish I was coming to visit. I'm going to Singapore in April. And I'm doing a workshop there, and then I've got a presentation that I'm doing in Kuala Lumpur, and I was really hoping that I'd be able to have the time to just pop over to Thailand and then pop over to Hong Kong. But I don't think I'll be able to do it all at once, so I'm just unfortunately going to stay within Malaysia and Singapore this time. But it's definitely on the list to want to come and see you guys, because I think what you're doing is amazing. But unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. And can we have a part 2? Because I want to hear more about your program that you're doing, because it's absolutely wonderful what you're doing. And I think your journey that you've expressed today has just been fascinating. And I think also that if any swimming teachers that are watching this and maybe want something a little bit different, or then search for it, right? You don't just have to stay with what you're doing and putting up with it, because like what you were told is, it's only just teaching swimming. Even if it is just teaching swimming, it takes you all over the world. Why not? And you never know where that can take you, the skills that you can take you. But as we close up today, knowing your experience that you've had, your amazing experience, we always mention about what we're teaching children, but is there something that a child or a person has taught you that you have never forgotten?
So it's funny you ask, but it was actually quite a recent scenario, and it was during one of the swimming lessons, or I would say as the lessons were wrapping up. And we've just introduced water polo as like an alternative game option for the children. And obviously those are different routes to go in with the aquatic disciplines. And one of the students really struggled with their hand-eye coordination and throwing and catching. And there was this little girl in one of the classes, and I overheard what she was saying to this little boy. And she said to him, "It's okay as long as you give yourself a try." And this little boy looked at her in such a way that it was almost potentially the first time anybody had maybe ever said that to him. And it really resonated with me in the sense of that scenario in particular. This little girl showed so much empathy and kindness, and she didn't have to do that, and she had another choice that she could have made with what she was saying and what she was doing. And she could have taunted, or she could have said, "Oh my God, what was that? That was rubbish." Or children and adults quite vile. And I've had my fair share of that working internationally, I tell you. And I was just so taken aback, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, just by the fact that she was just so kind and soft with him. And just that it built his confidence. As we were then wrapping up this lesson, you could tell that it really made his day, and it just made me feel so positive that there is still good in the world that we're in today. It is quite alarming, I find, and harsh. And it just gave me that really nice, warm, fuzzy feeling of that was just so lovely to not directly be a part of that moment, but to witness it and to
be an
see
observer.
How that little boy probably had a really lovely rest of the day because of that very quick, short interaction within his swimming lesson. And not because he's the best in his class or that he managed to do all of his assessment outcomes. It was nothing to do with that whatsoever. It was the fact that he gave a go and he tried and he was brave. And I think that is probably one of the most important things about swimming, is having a go and building confidence and creating a safe space for children and adults to have those experiences.
Yeah, it's those little comments as well that even at that moment, it probably only took a second or 2 seconds for her to say it, but you don't know whether that impact is impacted for the rest of his life. Because if someone had said or done something differently, mentally or psychologically, it could have taken a different viewpoint. But if she has done it naturally as well, in that particular moment was when he needed that. And I think that's really special. And I think as teachers, we offer that up to our swimmers. So that's why being mindful of how we choose our times and our moments, and even that observation for yourself, you've taken that in and obviously you're emotional about it, but obviously that means something to you. So therefore it's almost like that domino effect. You saw the effect that it did for those two. How could we potentially do that for others? And I think using swimming is one of those ways that we can do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for today. It's been really lovely, as always. I love our conversations.
Me too.
And if you are up for it, would you come back for part 2?
I definitely will come back for part 2. I feel like an hour just isn't enough.
I know.
I've been told I need to write a book. Maybe I will in the future. We will see.
Yes, please do. Absolutely.
But yeah, a part 2 would be lovely. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you, Georgina. Have a really good day. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.